Hi everyone, I'm Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I am going to do a beaded tassel for you today. The tassels have gotten really popular, and our Fort Myers store called and said that they had requests after the regular thread tassel to have a beaded tassel video, so I thought I would make that for you guys. And the beaded tassel here is going to be using 11O seed beads. In this example that I already have finished, I have used the 11O galvanized gold seed bead, and then I've also dropped off a little Rizzo from the bottom. It's topped with an 8mm cat's eye bead and then onto the gold plated bail. I'm going to be switching it up a little bit and using actually teardrops on the bottom of the one I'm making, and they are going to be in the black bronze color, which is a Miyuki coating or a check coating on a Miyuki 3.4mm drop. I'm going to be using 10 of those because I'm going to have 10 drop downs. You can do more or less if you want. The only thing that's going to restrict you is the size of the hole of your bead. So if you know you want to do a really full tassel, you may want to use a glass bead with a larger hole or a metal bead. For my 11O seed beads, which could be 15s if you want it to be a daintier look, I'm going to stick with the 11s though. I'm using the ivory Ceylon in the 11O seed bead. I have some super new glue sitting here as well as size 10 beading needles. I just need one. And then you're going to use about 2 feet of 0.006 wildfire beading thread, and I'm using the white color. I'm using white because of the colors of seed beads that I'm using, but also because instead of going right onto a bail, I'm just using a ring to show you a variety. And then I'll also talk about how you could attach it to other items as well. I'm also working on a bead mat, and I have a pair of scissors and my thread burner handy in order to get started with my thread. So I've laid everything out on my bead mat here, a pile of my Ceylon as well as my 8mm round, which I am using a marbleized pyrite 8mm round, and then I have a soldered 6mm ring that I'll be attaching to. So I've threaded my needle onto my 2.5 feet is really what I cut of beading thread. I'm going to have extras though. And what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to put on one of my seed beads and one of my drop beads. I'm going to let that go down to the end of my thread, just leaving about 1.5 to 2 inch tail. And I'm going to take my needle and thread back up through just that 11O seed bead. What's going to occur then is that teardrop is just going to hang down right at the bottom. If you wanted to make this a little bit shinier and blingier, you could use a 2mm round, a 3mm round, or a crystal at the bottom. Once I have that back through the 11O, I'm going to take my thread and simply tie a knot. And I don't need this tail to be very long at all. And I'm going to tie 3 knots. And I'm just going to let that tail hang out there for now. You have to determine when you're doing your tassel how long you want your tassel to actually hang down. This here is a little bit more than 1 inch, and it uses 20 seed beads. So it's going to use 20 11O seed beads. I'm going to stick with that same length for this second one here with the pyrite and the pearl color. So I'm going to add 19 more 11O seed beads. If you want to, you can put them out in groups of 20, or you can just get a ruler and measure them every time to make sure that you have them going. Once I have my beads, I'm going to push them all down next to that first drop. I'll just pull them apart here quick to count them so that way I know that I'm correct. One more. Once I have my first drop here, or my first little piece of tassel, I'm going to go in and add my pyrite bead. Again, this is an 8mm round bead. Again, you can use a faceted round, smooth round, 10mm, 8mm. It's up to you. What's going to matter is the size of the hole. Anything smaller than an 8mm generally is not going to have a very large hole. You could also use a bead with a larger hole. I was contemplating using a brass round here, a silver brass round, as my little fringe to hang down. So you could use that. It has a nice big hole that you can actually kind of hide inside of a little bit. But I'm sticking with the gemstone. I'm then going to go through my soldered ring and let that drop down next to my project. My thread and needle then is going to come back over my soldered ring so that way it hangs out there. and it's going to go back through my pyrite bead, down towards the bottom, that teardrop. Give a nice tight pull. There I have the first one, and I'm going to add 20 seed beads here for my second tassel. I'm going to repeat this about 10 times. Again, you can make it as full as your bead will allow. If you want to make it fuller, just keep that in mind. I'm going to let those beads drop down after I have them on my needle. Rather than counting, I'm just going to kind of line them up next to the tassel before it. And notice that I need 2 more beads. You can also make the tassels all different sizes too. That's up to you. Once I have those 20 in place, I'm going to pick up my next teardrop. I'm going to sew back up through that whole row of seed beads and back up through my pyrite bead. I'm going to come out the pyrite bead between the ring and the pyrite. Give a nice little tight pull. Go through the ring. Make sure you go through the ring or your loop's going to pull out. And then I'm going to go back down through the pyrite and come out on the other side. When you come out the other side, you want to make sure that you're only going through that last bead before the tassel and you're not going through any portions of your tassel. I'm just going to continue doing this, adding on my beads here to make my length of tassel, going back up through my 8mm bead. And then once I'm through that 8mm bead, I'll show you exactly how we're going to tie off and finish off our tassel. So just showing my tassel in the process. That is the tassel there occurring. I have 5 going through, and I'm about to add my 6th going through my loop and coming down. This is actually the same kind of technique that I used when I did my prom earrings years ago. So they've been around for a while. One thing, if you are repairing a tassel, earring, or necklace, or something that you may have, keep in mind this technique that we're doing here is a lot of times the technique that was used. So just be aware that if you do repair or take apart one strand, generally you want to make sure to knot that nice and tight because the whole strands, all the strands are attached to that one piece of thread. That's the easiest way to produce this and make it. Another way that you can do the tassel is actually to add double the length, so to do say 40 beads when you're working with it, and then actually just take it back through, so not actually adding a teardrop bead to the bottom, just making it loops and having loops there at the end. You can actually have the loops at the end then change colors, be different lengths. You can really change it up when you're working with it. So it's some ideas, because this is more of a technique more so, and just going up and creating this fringe. If you do like this fringe look, you can also check out some of our other YouTube videos, which we have one on a beaded fringe. One thing that I wanted to show you was that a lot of times as you're getting further and further along, especially if you're using a gemstone versus a glass bead, which is what I'm using, you need to pull the loop up a little bit so that way you can kind of move it to the side in order to push your needle through. If the needle starts getting really tight going through, you can even take a pliers, and this is just a bent needle nose pliers, and pull it through the gemstone to have a little bit more give. If you do need to, you can also switch to a size 12 needle. That'll be a thinner needle going through the bead, because there's plenty of space right now with the thread. It's putting the needle through that is actually getting it stopped, because for each strand you're having 2 go through. So I'm going to continue on adding a couple more pieces of my fringe here and then show you how to tie off my tassel. So I'm at the point now where I've added 10 of my little fringe, and I think I actually want to make it fuller. I don't have enough time or enough space in my bead to actually go through again, but if you would want to stop at this point, you're going to go through your bead, go around your loop, come down your bead, and then just tie a knot around the whole entire thing, knot off, and dab a little glue. What I'm going to do is add some more strands and show you how to problem solve that size of that hole. So I'm coming up through one of the last beads because I can't get into the actual pyrite bead. I'm going to jump over to the strand that is next to it and go through just the first of the beads that's closest to my pyrite bead. When I'm coming out of that, I'm going to add 19 since I already have one on that I'm going through. I'm going to add 19 beads. Once I have those 19 on, I'll add my teardrop bead. And then we'll go back up through all 20 beads. So that's going to be the bead that I'm coming out of, as well as then skipping to another one. So I'm going through the 19 beads that I just added, as well as that bead that I'm coming out of. So 20 beads altogether. If I want to continue adding fringe, which I am going to do, I'm going to spin around to the next one in line. Try to pick that bead up, come out of that bead there, and add more beads for my fringe. So I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to add these last 3 little pieces. So I'm ending up with 15 going through, or 15 tassel ends coming off of my bead. Once you have your last tassel done, what you're actually going to do is just knot off the project. So I'm just going to take that thread, go around the bead, making a loop, and I'm going to take my needle and thread through the loop, and that's going to create a knot right at the top. Because the thread is so thin, you're not actually going to see it very much. I'm going to do that 2 times. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue my end. So I'm going to go back to my super new glue here, go down to the very end where I started and had that little knot, and just dab a little bit of glue there. And then up here at the top, dab a little glue on there as well. I'm going to grab my scissors then, cut it off, and use it on a project. So just to show you, I finished my tassel, but I'm kind of creating a necklace now out of the tassel. And all I've done is pick up size 4 silk thread in white and just use more of my pyrite beads and my teardrops. And I'm creating a long necklace to have this dangle from, kind of mimicking that white color of the seed beads and working with the white thread. It's a size 4 silk in the Griffin beading silk, and I'm just grouping seed beads and some pyrite in between. All I've done is come down and knotted on the sides of the beads. I did knot twice on either side of the pyrite because the size 4 is a little bit thin for that. I would have actually probably preferred a size 6 thread, but I had a 4 on hand. I just came down, knotted, and continued through. Went down just like we did with the tassel, went through the loop, and then back up through the seed beads and that pyrite bead as well. You can also check out the knotting videos. If you search on YouTube on our page, there's a little magnifying glass. You can search knotting and you can learn and get the steps exactly how to do this silk knotting if you want to continue making this tassel into an actual necklace. So I'm finished with my necklace now, just adding again the drops in groups of 3 as well as some of the pyrites. And I've just attached it to my tassel just to show you the multiple ways and uses that you can do as a beaded tassel. You can also attach it to something like the vintage beaded ball that I just did. That would look great coming off of there as well. So it gives a fun, funky, kind of throwback, vintagey look to that flappers era with all this fringe that's becoming really, really popular and back in style. So if you don't want to do a threaded fringe or a threaded tassel, you can actually have fun and create a bead tassel, varying the length that you're doing, the number of strands, the beads that are on top. You can play around. You could do a color fade where it goes from darker to lighter. So just some ideas for you to play around with doing this beaded tassel. Hopefully this teaches you a fun technique just doing this fringe that you can use on a lot of other projects that you have, as well as you can check the other projects that we have using some of these different techniques by viewing the rest of our YouTube videos. You can also subscribe to our channel to get regular updates on videos like this, as well as new product updates. And as always, you can shop with us by Show More. You can get all the links by hitting the Show More button below me. You can kind of get the links to all the different products. You can also purchase them at our Potomac Bead Company locations, which you can get a list of those at PotomacBeads.com. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and happy beading, and have fun making these beaded tassels.